We were coming up with where we're going to hold this event today. The boys and I were looking at places in Toronto, and we're trying to determine where we're going to hold this thing. Then they saw my title, and they said, "Aaron, the big cover-up, this may not be appropriate for in Toronto given what's going on with Ford and the Ford Nation." So we thought we better get outside of the Toronto area and bring it out to Hamilton here in Burlington. So I thank you for joining us. One of the things that are transpiring out there is that a lot of the CEOs and executives that I meet talk about top-line growth, right? I'm going to hire for sales. I'm going to drive the top line. I'm going to give my sales guys incentives, put them on planes, get them all over the place. And geez, if I just had 10% or 12% more top-line growth, a lot of our problems would be solved. I challenge that thought, and that's kind of what Strategy Quake is about. So we're going to challenge this notion about sales driving the top line. There we go. Okay. So I've been in sales. I've worked for different organizations in sales, and rarely did I ever walk into a customer and say, we want to do business with you, but we got to meet these gross margins. Our operations works this way. This is when we can deliver your product, and if you like all of that, we can do business. It doesn't really happen like that, and salespeople don't usually talk like that. Salespeople usually talk like this. "Yes, Mr. Customer, thanks for that rate sheet from my competitor. I'm going to take it back to my sales department, and we're going to try to match it or do better." It sends the operations people and the CEOs kind of going, "Oh no, here we go again." But it's a vicious circle. But this is typically what transpires. And I hear all the time, is the sales team working for the company that pays them, or are they working for the customer? It's kind of a conundrum. But the issue is, typically the sales group is not out there working on behalf of the company, and there's a reason for that. Now, I'm not suggesting that sales is bad, by the way. I'm just saying the notion of driving a company by sales growth and putting a lot of effort in there is not really the deal. And sales is tough. They're the frontline guys and gals out there driving the business, facing customers, telling them, whatever they're telling them, having to come back and, Friday meetings or Monday sales meetings. These folks are really getting hammered out there. Let me share with you an email someone sent to me as I do the sales for my business, but this is March 21st, 2011, just to show you how tough it can be out there selling. "Aaron, I promised I would always be honest with you, so I'm being honest. Our heads are, I'm just reading this, okay, so our heads are very far up our ass right now. I have one plant burnt to the ground, and I have plants closing due to Japanese part shortages. Half the plants don't want to talk to me, and the biggest plant is screaming since they don't want to pay any fuel surcharge." For those truckers in the room, I know that. Our conversation between him and I is about 47 of a list of 50 things to work on. If it makes you feel better, you're ranked ahead of colonoscopy, prostate exam, and trip to Mexico. That's an email I got. So, sales folks, it's tough out there, I get it. But we got to change the conversation. We have to align the business. It's got to be profitable. If not, why are we all in business? I saw the show of hands of how many people own companies here. You're not getting up every morning saying, "I want to do things that cost or lower the margin to make profits." We're all here to make money, right? Alignment. Operations and sales have to be on the same page, and I'm going to go through how we can accomplish that. I have a little illustrative chart behind me. Now, what I want to show you is that in the current state to the left of that chart is company X. Let's say there's 3 strategies that I think, I'm not a finance guy, there's enough accountants and finance people in the room, but I think an organization makes money, net income, a couple of ways. You can increase your sales, you can reduce your debt, or you can just be more productive. By the way, I realize every organization tries to do all 3 of those. I argue they do the last one very, very poorly. But let's take a look at the second column there, sales revenue. Okay, folks, we're going to grow this business by 50%. Let's go. Well, it's great. We're going to add $50,000 on top of last year's revenue, but look what happens to my cost of goods, right? There is a direct cost related to that increase in sales. And we kind of filter down to the bottom, and yeah, we can argue, sure, yeah, it does impact the bottom line. We did see an improvement. Okay. Now I have another guy comes up and says, I want to reduce our debt. We're going to go through some financing. We're really going to, hammer this down this year. It's going to help our bottom line. Fair enough. But it doesn't really do any real serious damage. It does impact the bottom line, but okay, if you're looking for marginal growth on that strategy, fair enough. Look at the last column. The last column is an organization that is focusing on its productivity, on its supply chain from end to end, the direct costs related to the business, my inventory, my procurement strategy, my direct and indirect labor costs, and how they're accounted for. The accountants in the room could help them, I think, restructure this, but the issue is I'm tackling the core issue of my business. It is in my processes, systems, people, and the timing of what I do things and how I deliver it to my customer. I argue that by having a focus on the productivity side, using lean, value stream mapping, and a number of other strategies to right-size the organization, to do the right things at the right time, to be profitable, opens capacity in a business. It allows a company to be more competitive, to create barriers to entry for customers. I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean. And it delivers to the shareholders a more profitable and healthier and sustainable organization. We're essentially trying to drive to the bottom line. And when we use this kind of strategy, if you take a look at the bottom, I know it's a pro forma, but it makes the point that we actually can hit the bottom line a little bit harder, more impactful, more sustainable with all the things that we did. Now, fair enough, every organization is doing the first two really well, but imagine if you now employ this type of strategy where I'm really looking at what I do and how I do things. Now you really have a cool story at the end of the year. Okay, where's the money? In a $35 million organization, lots of issues, where do we start? Again, if we look at the cost of goods of sale, the answers are always there. You have to plan. As senior leaders in your company, you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy plan. You also have to have an operations plan. And those two have to come together for the goal that you're trying to achieve in your organization. From that plan, you need to be able to communicate that plan. There's a number of ways you can communicate the plan throughout the organization. Some of you might have single facilities, some of you might be across the country, some have 5 employees, others have 500 employees. Again, I'm not a communication expert. I know enough to be dangerous. But we tried something with somebody a year ago, and it's not like I created this, but I saw a lot of CEOs out there communicating weekly with their employees. And the communications, there were some good ones and some bad ones, but they were essentially trying to communicate that week's activity, the good, the bad, the ugly. But it's all trying to show behavior towards the goal that we're trying to achieve as an organization. So let me just read to you this. This is a president that we work with, and I just kind of said, look, why don't you communicate with your people every week, the good, the bad, the ugly, but towards the goal that we're trying to achieve in this particular project. So he said, fine. So this is an email from one of his vice presidents in Calgary who observed something that happened, and he wanted the president to put it in his communication that week or a follow-up week when he's going to encourage the employees. So just watch how it could work. Earlier this week, when the weather was bad in Calgary, we had a delivery of a Harley Davidson for a local DJ. This DJ is with this particular radio station, which is one of Calgary's top radio stations. Long story short, our people did such an extraordinary job under horrible weather conditions. The DJ on his afternoon show today made a very positive acknowledgement of our company, this client, and specifically named 3 people who were drivers for the business, truckers. I didn't hear the show, this vice president says, but the DJ had very positive plug for our company, getting the job done, and that was all that made the difference with great cooperation and effort by these 3 individuals. Not sure if it would fit or not, but would be great if this week's Friday comment could incorporate this somehow. What's happening here is a culture of wanting to highlight successes, something that really wasn't done, where everyone, 400 employees, can start to see and sense positive behavior. What can I do to get the goal achieved? Just an example. Okay, how do we now execute the plan? Real simply, there's tons of data that exists today. With SAS and SAP now coming together with their new platforms and trying to amalgamate data, represent data, we have more data than we know what to do with right now. And my team and I work we work with a lot of data. And I just say, look, keep it simple. Business is simple. We just make it really complicated. And I think when we're going to execute the plan, we just have to have some KPIs that we measure to that's towards the plan, towards the goal. So whether you're looking at your financial KPIs, whether it's operation KPIs, they just need to be aligned to the plan, to the goal. For example, in the case we're working on, we're looking at on-hand inventory. We're looking at cycle time. We're looking at accuracy of order shipped. Things like that. Things that align to that waste. Things that align to getting things done at the right time. So pick 5 or 6 KPIs across your business functions that are aligned to the goal. Hold everyone accountable. And now you're going to have some real great conversations. People are going to come to meetings with the KPIs. They're going to come held accountable. It's not, oh, well, I forgot to do that, I don't know. Everyone has to be aligned. When you have that aligned, what transpires in the boardrooms that I sit in, nobody debriefs on the plan. Nobody debriefs on execution. My brother-in-law just retired after 26 years in the military, Army, and Air Force. And they live and die by this structure, literally. Because if they don't debrief on an operation, the good, the bad, the ugly, when there's a mistake or there's something that's not observed and passed down, they die. So when we don't debrief our organization, we live another day to tell the story. It just might be a little painful, and I wish that person would just, ante up what they got to ante up so we can move forward. They would be clear. But you've got to create the structure for them to be clear, for them to be accountable, for the learning curve in the organization to be like a hockey stick. So debrief with your team. Let everyone know. So it might be a customer service related issue, but it might be really good to tell sales that this is what just transpired and this is how we're working on it. And you might want to tell operations, this is what just happened, this is what we're working on, and now everybody understands what's been going on. So it's essentially like a symphony. A symphony has many, many elements to it. Individually, they don't sound really great. But as the orchestrator, as the maestro starts to bring the different elements together, like in your organizations or your customers' organizations, harmony starts to trickle in. But there's a plan, there's a timing issue, and everybody knows what they have to do when they have to do it. And that's why some of the most remarkable symphonies in the world are remarkable. So, as I conclude, I just want to say that business is not complicated. Sales is not the answer. But when you have operations lined up that can communicate with sales and let sales know the capability, the capacity, the timing, and by the way, sales can come back and say, here's what our customers are looking for, here are the issues, and they work together. Now the sales conversation looks like this. Yes, Mr. Customer, we would love to be able to work with you. We're going to work with you through this solution, but here is how we can accommodate those changes. And now the salesperson is armed with understanding the operational elements. He can now be very confident in the meetings, or she can be confident in the meetings, and it's aligned to the goals of the organization being profitable. Everyone on the same page for the same goal. So that's my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them.